couple comments. Sippy Holes, it says, woot woot, that's the sound of the police. Yep, junk police in the house, brother. Out junk out. He says, how did you learn to track your KPIs? Through being mentored or experience and curiosity? How did you learn to that? Yeah, key performance indicators.
Yeah, Nick will like this one too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would. Out Junk Out. Shout out to him because I've talked to him quite a few times. He follows us on the TikTok and everything. But yes, in terms of tracking them, definitely a lot of just YouTube type of videos and like how to actually track it and what's important. But it ultimately, I wouldn't even say curiosity as much as like necessity. There was a couple of years that went by where revenue was up and our profit margins were just razor thin, and we're wondering like, what did we do wrong, pretty much. So that just makes you kind of get obsessed with the whole, numbers and all that end of it, because we had a year, I think we did 800 and something $1,000 a few years ago, and it was like sub $80,000 in profit, like nothing, 9% something. So we're like looking into this, like, why is that the case? It ended up being, in my opinion, because we grew a lot in 1 year's time, which was the main culprit of it. But it gets you definitely thinking. So within all that too, what we ended up finding out was we had an issue. We had a call answering service answering the phone for us. And basically with the leads that were coming in, they were only booking jobs at a rate of like 30%. When we switched, we had Rich track for his first month and it was over 50%. And that literally was the change in profitability right there. So from then, we pretty much just continued. Obviously, at a certain point, you just have to be paying attention to all that stuff. There's only really a few that are super important that you need to know. I mean, it's really your customer acquisition costs, which you could get into like cost per lead and all that stuff. But if you get your customer acquisition cost, that encompasses pretty much all that stuff. Then you need your booking rate that you're booking the jobs at, your average job size, so you know how much you're making off of each one, and your cancellation rate's another big one. There's a few more that are pretty important, but overall, if you have those down, you can at least look at your business from a, more of a spreadsheet type of look back and say, okay, I know if I spend, 10,000 on ads, I'm getting 50,000 in jobs, and 10% are going to cancel, so I'm getting $40,000 off of every $10,000 that I spend. And then, of course, from there, you want to look at in the ads, is it from Google, is it from Facebook, is it from this, from that, and that's where you kind of decide to put your money in. So.
Where do you track all your KPIs? Do you have like a system or an app that you use right now to track all that?
Yeah, Workies is that's our CRM that we use, is Workies. That pretty much tracks just about everything to give you the info. We do some stuff manually too. Like I'll go through some of our call portals. We could see like how many calls we got from Google Ads compared to the ad spend that we spent. Get it from there. And then you got to look at your GMB, how many calls you're getting from that. You kind of take your total calls and divide it by where you're getting everything from. Also, like tracking numbers and stuff with call rails. Also, like
I was just about to ask you with that, Nick. Do you what different tracking numbers do you use for like the different marketing? Like what do you separate to really track?
Yeah, so we used to be a little bit more into it. To be honest with you, right now, the last like year or two, we've been on kind of like a slow the growth, focus on profit mode for a little bit. So our only true avenue of like fresh new advertising is Google Ads. So that's like really easy because it's only one thing. We have like a different number that we use for our yard signs, so we can see that. We have like a demolition campaign that comes from a different number, so we can see that too. But overall, it's pretty much Google Ads and then Google local service ads. You could tell what everything comes from that directly because you get like a different report for that and stuff.
Facebook is messages. So.
Yeah, Facebook's messages. So we kind of have it down like that. If we were, you can get really extensive with the call tracking now if you really want to. I mean, you could have different numbers on.
Well, I wanted to bring that up. I did that because I started at the beginning, and before I even got into this, I got autopilot. I got my 5 free tracking numbers. So I set up every part. My truck number is different than on the website, but where this could be a real problem, and one of the Google guys actually was the one that pointed out, when you go and set those tracking, you're confusing Google online. And now you're going to have a problem because you have multiple phone numbers. So as long as you're keeping the call tracking to like your yard signs, your, if you got a special campaign or something like that, that's fine. But you also be careful with putting that online because Google recognizes that. And now it's having contradictory numbers, and that's a problem. And you get marked down on that as your ranking. So that's just something to keep in mind. So, tracking numbers are great, but you definitely got to, strategically use them. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, Nick and Rich, is when you guys were on the truck, what was the percentage that you were putting in your pocket of profits?
Like actual like paying
Yeah,
ourselves.
yeah. Like, were you bringing in 50%? Were you bringing in 30%? Like, what that you were keeping? That was your net.
We weren't keeping anything, but we were putting it all back into the business. But we were pretty much for a couple years like we didn't pay ourselves anything.
But what I'm trying to figure out is like, what's the difference from today from when you were on the truck? Like, how much of
Oh,
a
okay.
percentage
Yeah.
did you lose going in your pocket?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I would say that realistically being on the truck, I mean, even just looking at it from today, if we were to go out and do a job ourselves, we're going to make that 50 or 60% gross profit, or really actually like 60 to 70%, because you're just taking labor out of the equation. And then compared to if we send out employees and everything, we'll be closer to 50. So it's probably like that 20, 25% difference realistically. But I would say back then too, probably in the neighborhood of 55 to 60.
Wow,
60.
Nick, I got to hear the breakdown this because I'm impressed with what you're saying. So 50% as you're keeping employees, that is extremely high, because what I'm hearing from everybody else is like 30 and 35, something around there. So I like the video you made the other day on pricing and all. Can you kind of go over your formula, as far as like what you do? Because you incorporate everything in there to make sure you're getting that 50% returns. And that's what I really liked about you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. And just so I'm clear on it, it's gross profit. So
Okay.
this is just strictly the cost that it requires to do the job. Then after that, you still have your overhead. We put advertising on the back end as well, and then a couple other miscellaneous costs and everything like that. So in terms of gross profit, but yeah, for our pricing sheet, I mean, it's pretty much we're just looking at each and every price point on there. So for say our full truckloads, $897, call it $900. We're just basically making sure that whenever we do a full truckload, that the cost of that doesn't exceed $450, because that's the 50% gross profit right there. So that would be, the 2 hours to do the job, which usually it's less than that, but we say 2 hours to fill the truck and then a half an hour each way. So 3 hours, you have to dump as well. So call it 3.5. So then you tally together your labor, dump fees, and your fuel are like the main three. Some people throw maintenance in there and like truck payments and stuff for gross profit. But as long as those numbers are basically above 50%, that's what you're making. So like when I look at it from like a monthly basis, say just take a round number of like $100,000. You do $100,000, and then your gross profit on that after all your expenses for doing the jobs is $50,000. That's the $50,000 you have left to pay for your overhead, your advertising. For us, we put maintenance on the back end, miscellaneous, and tools and supplies, and like license and legal.
So realistically, you're keeping like 25-30% is going in your pocket end of the day, like
Yeah,
after
like
all the miscellaneous and all the insurance and all the, the
yeah,
maintenance and all
the
that.
goal would be 25. 30 is very, very good. It also
That's
depends on,
what I was saying. So when you said 50 at first, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I got
There's
you now, bro.
been months where we do 80,000 and spend 76. It
Okay.
happens. So I mean, that's obviously worst case scenario, but you define like the threshold for us. So like there's a break even number based on all your expenses, and then you have to push above that number basically to hit where you're trying to go in terms of net profit. But overall, net profit, you should be probably around 25% and then paying yourself and going down. But it's realistically a lot of times closer to 20, 25. It depends on exactly, what you're doing and how fast you're growing is a big part of it. Because if we, cut all of our ad spend off and just only did our repeat and referral business and everything like that, kept everything low and tight, we'd probably have a higher percent profit margin, maybe 27, 28, 29, but the actual dollar number would be less than doing, more revenue at 23%.
Overall net, yeah. I got you.
So it all depends on the growth rate of pretty much what you're doing. So we've had some years where we just every extra dollar we made, we're spending on advertising, just trying to get more customers, and don't really care. And then now, like I was saying, the last year or two, we've been kind of flipping that into wanting to just worry more about profit. So we lowered our ad spend for the year to closer to like 8 to 9% instead of 15.
Now, how many trucks are you guys running today?
Rich. All right, man. All right. Sorry, I know Rich was
We
thinking
have
that.
three
It doesn't
dumps.
matter, but we had 4. We sold 1 to 3 dump and box trucks that we use for junk removal, and then we do, like I mentioned before, almost half of our business is interior demolition. So that only really requires pickup trucks because a lot of it's subcontracting for remodeling companies, where we just show up with demolition tools and a pickup truck. They usually have a dumpster on site, or sometimes if there is debris to be hauled, we'll stage it in the driveway on a tarp, and then we'll add that job to the junk removal guy's route. So they'll pick up at the end of the day. So, it's only like 3 actual trucks, but we run a pickup truck or 2 just on demolition all the time. So it's just not the same type of truck that we need.